Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to go over some interesting news, ironically coming out of Troma Studios, which is something that we haven't seen in a very long time, I would say, or at least newsworthy stuff coming out of them. But the Toxic Avenger remake, which has been stuck in development hell for a number of years, appears to finally be moving forward. And Peter Dinklage has been cast in the film as the quote-unquote lead. Now, they haven't out and out said that he is going to be playing the Toxic Avenger, but they have stated that it's being very heavily implied that he is the lead character in the film. Now, if that's the case, I have a whole lot of questions for this, but the first question is why would Legendary pick this up? That's one of those other things that's kind of strange to me. Unless this is one of those type of deals where they're literally just drudging stuff up for nostalgia's sake. Maybe we'll see a remake of Troma's War somewhere down the line. But it's not really. It doesn't really make that much sense to me why they're remaking this film, and it's kind of strange because Troma does stuff their own way. Troma's always been a studio that does things their own way. They have their own little film universe. They have their films. They're all over the top and crazy and insane, and most of them are extremely awesome. But it has its own tone to it, and you're kind of passing that off to Legendary Pictures, which again is kind of an odd thing. Although it's possible the Legendary is just the overarching production studio, and they're letting Troma kind of do what they want to do. But at this point, it's definitely getting distributed probably by Legendary. But regardless, we have some information on this project. Now there is a director attached. His name is Macon Blair. And Macon Blair is somebody who is mainly an actor. He's also done some screenwriting. The only directing credit that he has, and he also wrote this, by the way, is I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. Now, that he made that for Netflix. It was a film, and it was basically kind of a dark teenage comedy about this weird kid who wants to try to find somebody to kill. And he runs into this girl, and then they go off on this weird adventure. It's just it's a very strange it's a very strange type of movie. It's got that kind of awkward dark comedy type of humor to it that doesn't 100% kind of fit. It's very awkward. Let's put it that way. It's awkward. It's meant to be awkward, but that's not really what the Toxic Avenger is. He's the Toxic Avenger, the film, is like every other Troma film. It's over the top. It's insane. It's hilarious. It has gratuitous amounts of violence. So I find it kind of odd that they would get somebody who like this to go direct it. Although I will say he probably came cheap, which would have made sense for them. But I probably would have gotten somebody who maybe was a bit more familiar with. Well, this guy's probably familiar with Troma films, I would imagine, if he offered to actually go up and direct this. But at the same time, I feel like this is going to be kind of a weird situation because I don't know what to expect from this guy. He's only released one film, so there's a big question mark with the director's chair in this. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I could be very pleasantly surprised by that too. That's not necessarily condemning the directing choice. I'm just saying there's not a lot to judge in terms of a body of work there. He has acted in several things. He was in The Hunt, which actually I thought that was pretty funny. And he also acted in one of his own films, which was the one that he did for Netflix. And he's also been in several other movies leading back to like 2007. So he's been around Hollywood. It's not necessarily something that he's unfamiliar with. So I don't think we're dealing with somebody who's necessarily extremely green when it comes to doing this stuff. But like I said, he's kind of a question mark at this point. Now, if you want to look at the Peter Dinklage casting, that has a whole other swath of questions attached to it. Now, with Dinklage's casting, they've also released a kind of a tagline for the movie. And this is even more kind of interesting. Is when a struggling everyman is pushed into a vat of toxic waste, he is transformed into a mutant freak who must go from shunned outcast to underdog hero as he races to save his son, his friends, and his community from the forces of corruption and greed. Um, and also Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz, who are the co-owner or the co-heads of Troma, are going to serve as producers, not executive producers, mind you, but producers. And now, see, so this raises a whole other slew of questions. So let's go into Peter Dinklage first. I don't disagree with the idea of turning the Toxic Avenger into a midget. I think that would be actually kind of amusing if they did that, or if they did something kind of funny where they like grafted Peter Dinklage's face onto a giant or something like that. That would be kind of amusing. But for the most part, I don't really get the idea of. I mean, the Toxic Avenger in the original film was a monster. Not in terms of just the way that he looked, but in terms of his size. And I can't remember who was actually in that suit for those scenes, but it was a very large person. Or it could be that Peter Dinklage may just be providing the voice of the monster after the fact, which would also be something that would be interesting if he's not actually front and center on screen. Because I believe the original Toxic Avenger had a dubbed voice over the scenes. The actor that was in the suit was not necessarily the one who was talking all the time. So you could go that route. Either way, I think having like a little midget Toxie running around would be actually kind of amusing. But again, that would depend on how goofy they took it. You know, how close to the actual Troma version of Toxie they're actually going to take this. And then the other question comes up is his race to save his son. Now, in the original Toxic Avenger series, in those films, I don't think he had a kid until the third or fourth one. So in this, it seems like he's going to already be a father, which means he'll probably be older, because again, the original Toxic Avenger was a teenager or early 20-something during that film, during the first film, when he actually became the Toxic Avenger. So this would be kind of interesting to see. Maybe they're going to do some kind of a family dynamic. I have a funny feeling that this is going to that this is the studio trying to studio up the film, I guess you would call it. And the thing is that again, Legendary is they're a legitimate studio. They're a large studio. They put out big budget films. They co-produce and co-finance a shit ton of movies. So maybe this is one of those things where they came down from the top and said, look, we need to make this palatable to a large enough audience for it to be worth our time and our money. So we're going to have to do this and this and this. And the thing is that if Troma is just kind of left to themselves, if Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz and their crew are kind of left to themselves, they make the most insane things possible, and they're also awesome. They are insanely awesome. But when you have a studio entity coming in, and keep in mind, Lloyd Kaufman has been 100% positive about this thing for the entire time that it was since it's been announced to now, which again has been 10 years at this point. So I have a little bit of faith that maybe this will be somewhat decent, or at least be interesting. I'm interested to see it in the sense of it's a new Toxic Avenger film. I'm curious if somebody's going to take a different spin on this and how this is going to work. I also like Peter Dinklage. I think he can play a very funny dick, and I think he also is a relatively good actor. So I think that's interesting. I hope they kind of maybe go down a road like there was another Peter Dinklage film that he did. I think 3 or 4 years ago. It was called Knights of Badassdom, and actually it might have been actually even before that. But basically, it was this movie about LARPing, and Peter Dinklage is a LARPer, and they summon this like actual demon by accident. And a bunch of insane, funny shit takes place. But Peter Dinklage is awesome in that movie. But regardless, this has a lot of question marks attached to it. Now, I can't answer a lot of those questions. I can speculate on a lot of them. But we're not going to know a lot until we actually have something that's filming, until we get more information on this project, until we start seeing stuff, until we see what Peter Dinklage looks like as Toxie, if he is actually playing the Toxic Avenger in a physical sense, or just what the Toxic Avenger is going to look like from this film, and all the stuff that's attached to that. You know, the trailers and the advertising and everything going up to the film. So, not going to be able to judge much from here, but there are a lot of questions, not a lot of answers, and I'm kind of curious where it's going to go. But I want to know what you think. Do you think it's interesting that they cast Peter Dinklage to play the Toxic Avenger? Again, assuming that is the case. Do you think that the Toxic Avenger should be rebooted? Because personally, I think it was fine where it was, but again, that's just me. And share if you're a fan of trauma films. Put your thoughts in the comments below, as usual. I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?